it's Kelly Thorne-Gore. I am a life and business coach and really just super passionate about helping you create a life you love. We have been going through this 40-day journey through Draw the Circle by Mark Batterson, and we are officially at the fourth of the way. A fourth of the way into this 40-day prayer journey. So today we are on day 10, and it's talking about crazy faith. Okay, so for those of you who already read today's devotional, I would love to know in the comments what stood out to you. What stood out to you about this crazy faith? And I really think there are multiple points in this particular devotional that I want to pull out, and they seem quite different. So it's hopefully going to all come together here. But I am so glad you're joining me, whether it's live or you're watching the recording. I am loving going through this 40-day journey with you. I told a friend earlier in the week that this is the perfect accountability for me to stick with it. And by the way, that's one of my little nuggets, is that if there's a place I struggle with accountability, I usually leverage social media to invite people to do it with me. And so I am loving your stories. I am loving what God is showing you and what He's revealing to you. And I am so excited because we're only at the fourth waypoint. And so we've got some big things coming up. All right, so let's dig in. So crazy faith. So he talks about the parable of the persistent widow from Luke chapter 18. And I think one thing to just keep in mind, that when there is a parable, there are always references to two types of people. So there's a reference to us, and we have to find where we fit into the story. And there's a reference to God. And so this parable of the widow, we are representative of the widow, and the judge is the representative of God. And so in the parable, it talks about how she was persistent. She was not going to leave his house. She was going to keep showing up. And I love this reminder, because how many times do we approach our prayers with that same persistence? With that same tenacity, with that same diligence? I don't know about you, but sometimes I quit too soon. I quit with the praying. I forget to pray about that particular thing. Or I stop praying, or I'm just not doing it. Anybody else relate to that? Like, we feel something and we're diligent in the moment. I can tell you, if you follow me on my personal page, this past weekend, my daughter had a big scare. My husband and I were out of town. My daughter was with a sitter. She had a severe asthma attack, like totally out of the blue. She hasn't had one in years. I was so shocked, but I can tell you the fervency of my prayers as I'm driving her to the hospital, really as we're driving back to get her and go to the hospital, was so fervent. And it made me think, what if I approached all of my prayers with that same tenacity, that same perseverance of almost a begging of God that you've got to show up in this moment? And I know some of you are walking through some really hard stuff. And you're in this place where you can't quit praying. Like, you're desperate for God to show up. And I think it's in those moments that we have this deep reliance on God, that there is no other choice. And I'm pretty convinced that God allows us to go through things like those crisis moments so we learn to lean on Him. So we learn to rely solely on Him. I don't know about you guys, but I would venture to guess that you are very talented, that you have a lot of gifts, And you are incredibly gifted because I know God's wired you that way. And so sometimes it can be really easy to rely on our own gifts. But when God gets us in those crisis moments where there is no way to rely on us, we can only rely on Him. That's when we see Him move. And so what if we approached what we're circling and praying for, not as if we can do it on our own, but that we're praying and we're expecting Him to show up in a really big way, and then we're just doing each next step He shows us? How would that change your prayer life? How would that change your life? Okay, let's dig in to a few other things. So I love where he talks about the common denominator in each of these stories. And he's talking about, the moments when the 4 men lowered their I'm blanking on what he had. He was paralyzed. So they lowered him down, and it was their faith, like that they were willing to take the roof off this place. And of course, it got the attention of Jesus. And so it talks about different examples. So you can read that in there. But he says the common denominator of each of these stories is crazy faith. Do you have crazy faith? And I know for me in my life, God has developed the crazy faith through the hard seasons of my life. And that's where that was cultivated. I remember when I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and the doctor said that I had probably 6 months to live, and I was 18 years old. That is when my crazy faith was really birthed, because I had no other choice but to rely on God. Or when my dad struggled with addiction and attempted suicides, there was no way I could fix that. It was a crazy faith that was required. Okay, so it says people took desperate measures to get to God, and God honored them for it. And nothing has changed. God is still honoring spiritual desperados. I love that. Who crash parties and climb trees. God is still honoring those who defy protocol with their bold prayers. God is still honoring those who pray with audacity and tenacity. So are you praying with tenacity? I love how he says that it's not our vocabulary. It's not having these big, beautiful prayers that are awe-inspiring. It's the heart. It's the tenacity. It's the faith in which we pray. And so you may think you're not very good at prayer, but you know what? It's just talking to God. It's just revealing your heart to Him. It's not these big, beautiful words. It's just simply letting Him see your heart and you crying out your heart to Him. Okay, I love this next part. It says the defining moments in life when we need to prove to God that we mean business. And I don't mean business as usual. In fact, when business as usual goes out of business, that's when we're in business, the Father's business. That's when we're on the verge of a spiritual breakthrough. In other words, when you are at the end of your rope, that's when you're on the verge of a spiritual breakthrough. So do you have a moment where you feel like you're at the end of your rope? You're not sure what to do or where to turn. This is when we start praying. I loved the example that he used of the pastor in North Carolina. And they had this huge mission, this huge vision, and they couldn't cover their lease. And so this pastor had them spray paint a circle. And he said, I'm not leaving this circle until that lease is taken care of. And God provided that over and above what was needed. And so my challenge to you today, the challenge to myself is one, where do I need to dig in deeper? Where do I need to pray and expect bigger, bolder things? That's number one. But number two, where do I need the spiritual breakthrough? And am I willing to do the hard stuff to expect and believe God for more? And I know some of you may be thinking, okay, wait a minute. This is like so outside my spiritual foundation because it's just not something you've ever experienced. And if that's you, what I would encourage you to do is to sit with God and to allow him to speak into your heart and allow him to show you what do you need from today's devotional. Because I do believe God's expanding our level of knowledge, our level of experience. And so I want to encourage you with any devotional, any book, anything that a speaker would say, you want to take that to God and you want to ask him, what do I need to get from this today? So my challenge to you, where do you need to dig in deeper? Where do you need to ask God to do something more? Where do you need to exhibit tenacity and perseverance and determination? And then two, is there a place where you need to experience some spiritual breakthrough? Or maybe some financial breakthrough, or marriage breakthrough, or life breakthrough, purpose breakthrough. Take that to God today. All right, I hope you have a fantastic day. I'll see you tomorrow.